Next up, we've got Laura Delprato. Did I get it again? I did it right?
Got
Awesome,
it.
awesome, awesome. Really excited about this interview here. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna let her explain and we'll go through and ask some the questions, but really excited for everyone to hear what Laura has to say and what she put together. So with that, please introduce yourself, Laura. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from. Go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. Like Jason said, my name is Laura Delprato. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I've been living in Virginia for the past 8 years. And I first discovered light painting when I was in my high school film photography class. It was a light writing technique they were demonstrating. And when I found out about it, I was so fascinated. I put on a Cinderella dress. I asked my brother to do a flashlight spiral around me. And after that, I was hooked because I was so excited about the magic of light painting, which I hear a lot of light painters talk about the oohs and ahs when someone first hears about it. I'm all here for it. So since then, I in college actually did a 3-part thesis on light painting photography. The first part was writing, so I wrote about light painting theory. The second was doing a body of light painting work, and the third was doing interactive light painting workshops. So a lot of what I'm here to talk about today is some of the theory of what makes light painting a unique independent art form from photography itself, and what makes that so magical. And so I'm really excited to talk to you all and answer your questions, Jason.
Yeah, we're absolutely excited to have you. So, with that, we're going to jump right into it. And I'm going to ask you a question I don't think I've ever asked anybody before. What is light painting? Like from your point of view, what is light painting?
Yeah, so I would say light painting is, I wrote it down so I'd describe it directly to you. The intentional choreography and recording of light through space-time. So like light painting the art. And then if you think of like a light painting, like how Dimitri was showing a specific light painting photograph, I would say that's a 2D representation of 3D objects moving through the fourth dimension, which is space-time.
Awesome. Yeah, you got that? So and I know I've heard you talk about light painting before, and I just want to say like your passion for it is just beautiful. So it's always awesome to hear what you have to say. What does light painting mean to you?
Yeah, so light painting for me, it has these kind of ultimately, if I had to describe it in 2 words, no, 3 words, it allows us to illuminate the intangible. And it has these kind of 3 key functions of you can transform place into space, you can transform objects into subjects, and you can also infuse magic into the mundane. So in a lot of light paintings that I've seen, I kind of see them doing those 3 unique things, ultimately illuminating this thing that is, it's truly intangible, like how we can't see what we're doing, but through the camera as a tool in that resulting photograph, you can see what we were creating in the fourth dimension of moving the lights through space-time. And so those would be like the functions. I see the art form using it, but then also for me personally, I think it creates this unique space where you can work with people from maybe they're all over the world, maybe they're at different levels of power in an organization, and you can invite them to just re-enter that space of play where, okay, a lot of us, maybe we have more experience with light painting. If you're a light painter, you've been doing this for a while, but when you introduce it to someone who's never light painted before, it just invites everyone to go back to that beginner's mindset, and you can see that magic of collaboration where people try something new, get into a vulnerable state, and then try it out together. And I just really love the magical collaboration and creative space that it can create for people working together for a common goal.
And that's exactly what I tell everybody myself. It's awesome. You talk about something within your light painting thesis called fourth space. Could
Yes.
you explain that theory? And, what does that mean?
Yes, great question. So the purpose of my thesis or theory of light painting was This was, I wrote, just so you all have context, I wrote this back in 2014. The Light Painting World Alliance had just formed in 2012, and I was just so excited by people from all over the world wanting to connect because of their love of this unique art form. And not that many people, well, Jason Page actually written a lot on lightpaintingphotography.com, but in like art literature, if we're looking in academic journals, I saw a lot of articles about photography, but they only reference light painting as a photographic technique. And I'm like, hold on, there's just so much more than it being just a photographic technique. So my purpose in writing my thesis was to try to help elevate light painting as an independent art form. And I came up with, so in order to do that, my thesis advisor was like, well, you need to illustrate what does it do uniquely that other art forms don't do. So my theory is that the light painting, the art, creates fourth space. And so I need to break it down into kind of the two words there. Fourth is referencing the fourth dimension. And so if we think about a single dimension, right, that's like a point. So like one coordinate, one dot. If you think about two dimensions, you might have an x-axis and a y-axis. So 2 dimensions, you can plot a point along an axis. 3D is what we see. So like, right, believe it or not, I know we are familiar with the concept of time, but we're actually seeing like 3D shapes, or a photograph is actually 2D technically, but we can see depth, right? There's that third or Z axis. We often think of the fourth dimension as time, but if you get into the physics or the theory of it, it's not actually just time, it's space-time. So like space and time are interconnected. So I'm talking about fourth because in light painting, unlike a photograph, actually, should we pull up the Toyota Yaris yet, or should we do that? Would that be helpful here?
Yeah, I can. So,
Yeah. I have an image to help talk about this. If we talk about one point in time, so I sent Jason ahead of this. It's hard to kind of describe.
Hey, Laura, which one? The object?
The stretch instant, the stretch, the car, the stretch instant. Gotcha. Yes. Okay. So this is an image. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yep, absolutely.
In trying to explain like the fourth dimension, I just thought it would be easier to have a visual because it's already complicated as is. But so, right, if you saw a car, that might be just one point in time. But space-time is actually like objects moving through the fourth dimension. So a light painting, whereas photography, there's a lot of critics who have talked about photography and they say it's like a capture of like one specific instant in time, or we all know there's shutter speed, so maybe it's really at 1/30th of a second or something like that. But really, light painting doesn't really work in trying to freeze one moment. It tries to illustrate objects, 3D objects moving through space-time or the fourth dimension. So I in my thesis, I tried to illustrate this with, there's this, I really need to credit the artist of this, and we can put that in the credits in the recording, but this I just found on Facebook, and it was like this, I called this the stretch instant. So like it's trying to demonstrate that movement of 3D objects through the fourth dimension. We're only seeing it right now, 2D. But what's interesting is we can't actually see the fourth dimension, but light painting, I think, is almost our closest attempt at seeing objects of the fourth dimension, because we can really only see the shadow of it. And for those of you who are like scientists or into physics, you could probably describe some of the physics behind this a little bit better than me. I only minored in physics, but that's what fourth refers to. So then if we talk about space, I defined space in my thesis as the actions that is defined by the actions that occur. So if we go back to the third dimension, right, often we define space as like a geographic location. We'll say like, where are you from, right? Oh, New Jersey or Virginia. We're talking about like a place or like 3 coordinates, you could find it. But what light painting does is it transcends place. So it allows you to take this one like place and transform it into a space that gives it a narrative. So my overarching theory of what light painting uniquely does is it creates a fourth space narrative, meaning not just a story about where we are in time right now or who, like I am as one person, but rather who are we as humans across space-time. And if you look at the light painting, I don't know how many of you were on Flickr back in the day. That's kind of where I kind of grew up in the light painting community, but a lot of people were light painting things like aliens or unicorns or dinosaurs or different entities that allowed us to almost coexist with different space-time
You know what's neat is it's like showing somebody that something exists that you can't see,
Yes.
more and less. So, and to me, when I try to wrap my head around that just, it's so fascinating when you think of that, like with the car going through there, even though you might have physically seen the car drive from point A to point B, the camera allows you to see somewhere else it was where it did exist, but we don't have the capability of actually seeing that, but the camera can show that. So it's really neat. You said, so I absolutely love saying this, and it makes me feel like I'm saying something important, but and I hope I say this right, but spatial temporal awareness.
Yes.
And that's such a cool, I almost love saying that as much as I love saying Rob D'Angelo's name. He knows I love saying his name, but can you explain that for us?
Yes. So, and I want to almost give like a shout out to Dimitri because we were talking about like multi-composite. So if you think about light painting as being this representation of objects moving through space-time, the light painter themselves has to develop a spatial temporal awareness. And this is really what I think sets light painting apart from digital art, right? How many of you have been like, what? It's not photoshopped? I don't believe you. It's in the real world. This is why, like, we intentionally create in the real world because it's creating, you're developing a spatial temporal awareness. And the best metaphor I can give is it's almost like you're working with a fountain pen. So when you're like drawing or painting, right, you might be thinking about 2D, you might be thinking about depth, how to create illusion of depth. Light painters aren't really creating an illusion of depth. We're actually physically walking through depth. And so you need to be aware of the room you're in and where you are, space, right? Those coordinates, X and Y and Z. But then you also need to be aware of how long you're spending time. Did I hold that sparkle in one place for too long? Is it now too hot? Is that going to be too bright? So this really, as light painters, I almost feel like you develop a closer, like a really strong mindfulness ability where you're aware of the present moment and multiple moments at once as you're developing the spatial temporal awareness. And what that does, or I was mentioning Dimitri, is because, right, we were talking about like multi-composite or in-camera composite. I would almost argue to answer your earlier question, Jason, like, right, should we be like more accepting of that? I almost would argue that if you're using in-camera composite, that gives you more immediate feedback to develop that spatial temporal awareness that allows you to create fourth space narratives and then really help you illuminate the intangible of that light painting concept that you're trying to illuminate for others.
Absolutely. This is one I'm really excited about, as with everything, what you're talking about, and I just heard you mention it just a tiny bit, but please explain past, present, and future. What is that exactly?
Yes. Okay. So when you're a light painter, you are illuminating the present, you're also illuminating the past, and you're illuminating the future. But when you're showing that final image, it's all at once and also yet nothing at once. So if we pull up that image of the stretch, the stretch instant, or that stretch Toyota Yari, because I think it's just helpful for me to be able to point out in here. So, right, what's really fascinating to me about this is that this car, right, it existed at all moments in time in this image, and yet it also didn't exist at any one moment in time ever. Like, you can't go out and see that actual car, but that doesn't mean that that stretch instant or that stretch Toyota Yaris didn't exist, because it did, and we have proof in the light painting. So what I was trying to talk about is that in that spatial temporal awareness, the light painter has to navigate how to translate the past, present, and future, and both connect with it, but be able to not hold on to it too tightly either. So connect and let go at the same time.
I mean, it just blows my mind. It's so intriguing and so fascinating to me. I love it. Jason says something. He has a saying, light erases dark. Could you explain to us how this pertains, to what we're talking about with your thesis? So light erases dark. How would that tie into what we're talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things that I find really beautiful about light painting and the physical process of light painting is that we have to go into the dark to be able to illuminate the light. And if we were just outside in bright daylight all the time, we couldn't see how brightly we shine or how bright our ideas shine. So when we focus on the constructive, we can create a more optimistic view of the world. But even more powerfully, if we go back to that concept of light painting, being able to transform place into space, when you choose to light paint, you are choosing how to respond to the darkness, be that physical darkness or metaphorical darkness of dark thoughts or right, like things that are destructive or not actually helpful to your well-being. And so if you can cultivate that spatial temporal awareness that allows you to choose how to respond to the darkness, it can give you more power to illuminate the narrative that you would like to tell and the way you would like to illuminate the world. But even more importantly, like Dimitri was mentioning, how we can illuminate that world together and share a more constructive, collaborative narrative.
And also, doing what makes you happy. You know what I mean? So, Dimitri hit on that right there. So that all ties into that too as well. When I heard you talk about this next question last week when we got together, this was something I was so excited about. And it really just left me like really thinking in my head about this because it's so intriguing. But there's something you talk about that obviously I find it pretty intriguing, but it's multiple identities. Can you explain this to us? So I hope this blows some minds like it did mine when you really think about it.
Yes. Such great questions. Thank you. So if we think about, I'm going to go back to like the birth of photography. What's really interesting about the birth of photography is that for a while it was thought of as a science. Photographs weren't even appreciated as art. It wasn't, and even if you go back to the history of like light painting before it was light painting, like done intentionally for art, people were doing it with multi-exposure photographs to try to understand science and create efficiency and benefit businesses, which is so ironic because light painting itself is not an efficient process per se if you're trying to think about speed or just come up with a final product. I think light paint, I'm going on a slight tangent here, but light painting allows you to bring that humanness back into things. Like, you can't build relationships in an instant. You build relationships across time, and it's that intentionality of being able to do it across time that can make it so meaningful and more impactful too. And so if we think about multiple identities, right, you might be, if as a light painter, you are both an artist, a photographer, a director, you are a choreographer. The number of steps that Dimitri was demonstrating, that was intense light painting choreography right there, right? Like, you had to come up with it, pre-plan it, then do it, and then you also are executing it. But then, especially if you're working with models or working with other people, you're also a teammate and collaborator. And so if I think about light painting, we're having to navigate what a lot of us have to navigate in our lives every day. We don't just play one role. It's hard to compartmentalize just, I am just a daughter, I am just a worker, I am just a student. what the light painter does is they can navigate those identities in a way that doesn't make you feel, how do I explain this? That doesn't make you feel like you have to choose, but like you are all, and yet you are none, and yet you are each and every one. So it allows you to practice not holding on to any one identity too tightly, but being able to navigate across them to create the outcome that you desire.
You know, and so I took this away and I thought about it too. And, you know, to hit on that, something I thought was fascinating was with multiple identities, just picture it like this way. So you become the light. So you're actually becoming something different. And it all ties into your thesis too. You're not just, you know, the one taking the picture, you know, choreographing all this stuff together, but you're becoming something else too. You are becoming the light. So I just thought that was really neat when I thought about it that way. And you know, just to grow on that. So it's really fascinating to me.
Well, Jason, I love that, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because this is another point I actually wanted to mention is the medium that we choose to work with as light painters. What's so beautiful about what you just said is, in science, light is both particle and wave at the same time. Like, even on a scientific level, it's just so fitting that we chose to work with light, because we get to be both, and light also is both, and yet it can be either one. So I think that that's really cool, that that's the medium we choose to work with.
Absolutely. You know, one last question, Laura. You know, to someone reading your thesis, what would you want that person to walk away with? And how do you feel the theories could benefit someone wanting to create light painting work, or even those that have experience, you know, within the community? So, to either the experienced or the beginner level, you know, somebody that would read this, what would you want them to walk away with? You know, how would it pertain to light painting for them?
Yeah, such a great question. I would say, like, if you notice yourself trying to figure out, like, what is my identity? Am I an artist? Am I a light painter? Am I a photographer? Like, who am I? And you start to notice, like, I use a camera, but I don't really identify fully as a photographer. Like, you're not alone. I think that's like my biggest message is, like, there's a whole community of light painters that get you, and like, you can really play with that, and what you're doing matters. And I think even if you can't practice all the time, because, right, I totally believe in deliberate practice, but sometimes light painting can be complicated. We may not have like physical access to the locations, right? Being able to go to these epic mountain locations or caves or tunnels, or that, you can still light paint and kind of be part of that light painting community when you practice the light erases dark, and when you choose how to respond. And so I would just say there's a whole community of people who are like eager to support you, and to just experiment, explore, and have joy as you play and try things out. And then we're here to support you.
That's fantastic. Well, you know, I can say just the work that you did, the effort, the passion, just all that, just you know, hats off to you. It's so beautifully done. I appreciate you, you know, talking about it. You know, does anybody have any questions for Laura they might want to ask for what she was talking about?
I just want to say something. Laura, you stole the show. Well done. Well done.
Right?
It was amazing interview, and I couldn't literally, you know, my English is not my basic language, you know, so I got sometimes problem to say what I actually think, but literally you just said some amazing words today, and I couldn't even imagine to say it better, you know. Well done. You stole the show. Well done.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think honestly, like, my biggest thing is, like, thank you for having me. I mean, from my own personal journey, like, I have been so lucky and just grateful that the light painting community has welcomed me. When I was writing this, I was like 21, 22 years old, and I got invited to like a light painting world record, lots of other amazing life experiences because of light painters. So I'm just really grateful for the space that you all have welcomed me into, and giving me the opportunity to share today.
Well, yeah, we're grateful for you. I mean, what you've done and what you contributed, I think it's important to the light painting community. So thank you.
And I want to say again, thank you very much. It's so important for this art form to have the language that you're providing. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that definitely is one of the biggest, things about this is just having putting a voice to light painting, and it's beautiful. It really is. So I appreciate it and appreciate you being here, Laura.